She crossed the room naked, crawled onto me, and smiled. The war had been going on for 3 years, and humanity was losing badly against the Vorathian Empire, but nobody expected what happened next on Research Station Omega-7 when they captured their first live enemy soldier. Lieutenant Chris Martinez stood in the observation room watching the alien prisoner through reinforced glass. The creature was unlike anything he had seen before, 7 feet tall with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. Her body was humanoid but different in ways that made his breath catch, 4 arms instead of 2, eyes that glowed with an inner violet light, and markings across her skin that pulsed with bioluminescence. Her name was unpronounceable in human tongue, so they called her Luna. She had been captured during a raid on a Vorathian supply convoy and brought to the station for interrogation. For 2 weeks she sat in silence, refusing to speak or acknowledge anyone who entered her cell. The xenobiologists were fascinated but frustrated. The military commanders wanted answers about Vorathian defenses and battle plans. Tris volunteered for the night watch rotation because he was curious. Something about Luna intrigued him beyond mere scientific interest. He would sit outside her cell during the quiet hours reading reports and occasionally glancing up to find her watching him with those luminous eyes. There was intelligence there and something else he could not quite name. On the 15th night, everything changed. The station power flickered and died, plunging the detention block into darkness. Emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in red shadow. Chris grabbed his weapon and ran toward Luna's cell, expecting an escape attempt or rescue mission. But what he found was different. Luna stood at the force field barrier, which had failed when the power cut out. She could have run, could have killed him easily with her superior strength. But instead she simply stood there, looking at him with an expression he recognized as curiosity. Behind her, the cell was a mess. She had carved symbols into the walls with her claws, intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story. "You are not like the others." Her voice entered his mind, directly bypassing his ears. Telepathy was not something the xenobiology reports had mentioned. "You watch me differently." Chris lowered his weapon slowly. His training screamed at him to call for backup to secure the prisoner. But something made him hesitate. "What do you mean differently?" "The others see an enemy, a thing to study and extract information from. You see a person." Her mental voice was like cool water flowing through his thoughts. "Why? Because I think this war is based on a misunderstanding," Chris said, surprised at his own honesty. "I think neither side really understands the other, and that ignorance is killing millions." Luna stepped through the barrier, her 4 arms moving with fluid grace. Chris should have been terrified, but he felt oddly calm. She moved closer until she stood directly in front of him, towering over his 6-foot frame. One hand reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, but he did not move. Her fingers touched his face, gentle despite the obvious power in them. "You are correct, human Chris. There is much your people do not understand about mine, and much my people refuse to see about yours. The symbols on my wall tell the true history of our conflict, but no one has asked to hear it." "Show me," Chris said. The words came out before he could think better of them. What followed over the next hours changed everything. Chris thought he knew about the war. Luna used a combination of telepathic images and her carved symbols to tell a story that made his blood run cold with understanding. The Vorathian Empire had not attacked humanity out of aggression or desire for conquest. They had been fleeing something worse, a plague that consumed worlds and left nothing but death. The Vorathians had stumbled into human space by accident, desperate and afraid. When human ships had responded with hostility, the Vorathians had defended themselves. Each battle had escalated the conflict until both sides were locked in total war, neither remembering how it started or why. The Vorathian High Command had hidden the truth from their own people, claiming humanity was the aggressor. Human Command had done the same. "This is insane," Chris said when the story was complete. "All this death, all this destruction over a misunderstanding and pride." Luna nodded, her glowing eyes sad. "My people are dying, human Chris. Not from your weapons, but from the plague we fled. We need a new home, new hope. We are not conquerors. We are refugees, then why keep fighting? Why not just tell us the truth?" "Because my leaders fear your response. Fear that if they show weakness, you will exterminate us. There's no trust between our kinds, only fear." Chris felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. He was just a lieutenant. Nobody important, but Luna had chosen to tell him this truth. "Why me? Why tell me this? Because you see persons, not enemies," Luna said simply. "And because I have seen your mind in these weeks of watching, you have the rare gift of empathy even for those different from yourself. You could bridge our peoples if given the chance." The power came back on with a sudden hum. Alarms began blaring as the security systems detected the containment breach. Chris had seconds to make a decision that could change everything. "Come with me," he said, grabbing Luna's upper left hand. Trust me, Luna could have resisted, could have killed every guard in the station and escaped on her own. Instead, she let this human lead her through the corridors. They reached the communications center where Chris used his access codes to override the security lockout. "What are you doing?" Luna asked as he brought up long-range transmission systems. "Something crazy," Chris said, fingers flying over the console. "I'm going to broadcast your story to both our peoples simultaneously. If enough humans and Varathians hear the truth, maybe we can stop this war." "You will be executed for treason," Luna said. But there was hope in her mental voice. "Maybe," Chris agreed. "But if it works, if it saves even a fraction of the lives this war will claim, then it's worth it." Luna watched him work and felt something she had not experienced in years. Hope mixed with admiration for this small human who was willing to sacrifice everything for peace. She moved closer, standing beside him as he prepared the transmission. Without thinking, her lower right hand found his shoulder, offering support. Chris looked up at her and smiled. "Whatever happens next, at least we tried." "Right," Luna returned the expression, her alien features arranging themselves in something close to a human smile. Her people had a concept similar to what humans called love, though it was more complex, involving mental connection and shared purpose. In this moment, watching Chris risk everything, she felt the beginning of that bond forming. The transmission went out on all frequencies, human and Varathian, military and civilian channels. Luna's story told in her own telepathic voice, translated by the station's computer systems. The images of the plague, the flight, the desperation, all of it broadcast across the galaxy. Guards burst into the communications center, weapons drawn. Chris raised his hands in surrender, but Luna stepped between them. Her forearms spread wide in a gesture of protection. "This human has done what your leaders could not," she projected to everyone in the room. "He has shown courage beyond any warrior I have known. He deserves your respect, not your weapons." The standoff lasted eternal seconds until the station commander arrived. Colonel Patricia Wells was a hard woman shaped by years of war. But she was not stupid. She had seen the transmission, had heard the truth in Luna's words, "Stand down." She ordered her guards. Then to Chris, "You just committed career suicide, Lieutenant. Possibly actual suicide, depending on how high command reacts." "I know, Colonel," Chris said, "but it was the right thing to do." Wells looked at Luna, then back at Chris. "For the first time in 3 years, I think I agree with someone about this damned war," she said. "Let's see if the rest of humanity and the Varathians are smart enough to do the same." Over the following days, the response was chaotic. Some called for Chris' execution. Others hailed him as a hero. On Varathian worlds, riots broke out as the people learned the truth about why they had been fighting. But slowly, impossibly, peace talks began. Luna remained on Station Omega-7 now as a diplomatic guest rather than prisoner. She and Chris spent long hours together translating Varathian concepts for human negotiators and explaining human culture to Varathian representatives. Their bond deepened beyond mere friendship into something neither species had words for. One night cycle, after a particularly exhausting negotiation session, Chris returned to his quarters to find Luna waiting. She had requested permission to move freely about the station, and it had been granted as a gesture of goodwill. "I wanted to thank you," she said, both aloud and mentally. "You gave my people hope when we had none." Chris smiled tiredly. "We both did. None of this would have happened if you hadn't trusted me with the truth." Luna moved closer, her bioluminescent markings glowing brighter. "Among my people, when two individuals form a bond of shared purpose and deep understanding, we perform a ritual of joining. It is intimate and requires absolute trust." Chris felt his heart rate increase. "What does it involve?" Luna answered, not with words but with action. She crossed the room with fluid grace, shedding the simple garment the humans had given her. Her blue skin seemed to glow in the dim light, every movement both alien and beautiful. She crawled onto his bed where he sat frozen in surprise and smiled that almost human expression that had become familiar. "This is our way of saying you are."